The morning sun painted Golden Meadow in shades of amber and gold. Stephanie Boyd stood at the window of her small cottage on Maple Street, watching the town slowly wake up. At 66 years old, she had learned to appreciate these quiet moments before the day truly began. Her silver hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her gentle blue eyes reflected 2 decades of carefully constructed peace. She lived alone, and she preferred it that way. The cottage was modest but comfortable, filled with books about animals, pressed flowers from the meadows, and photographs of the pets she had helped care for over the years. There were no pictures of her past life, no reminders of who she used to be. That person had died 25 years ago in a laboratory accident that haunted her dreams. The cottage itself had become a sanctuary over the years. She had painted the walls a soft cream color, installed bookshelves in every room, and created a small garden in the backyard where she grew herbs and vegetables. The kitchen window looked out onto a bird feeder she kept stocked year-round, and she had learned to identify every species that visited. This attention to small, living things had become her meditation, her way of staying connected to the natural world without the pressure of her former career. Stephanie made herself a simple breakfast of tea and toast, then prepared for her walk to work. She moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency, a rhythm established over thousands of similar mornings. She checked the weather, clear and mild, perfect for the walk. She filled her water bottle, packed her lunch of homemade soup and fresh bread, and pulled on her comfortable walking shoes. Dr. Patterson's veterinary clinic was only 15 minutes away by foot, and she enjoyed the morning stroll through town. Golden Meadow was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, where neighbors waved from their porches and shopkeepers called out greetings. The town had a population of just under 3,000 people, small enough that anonymity was impossible, but large enough to support a thriving main street with essential businesses. "Morning, Stephanie," called Mrs. Chen from her bakery window. "Good morning, Helen," Stephanie replied with a warm smile. "Are those your famous cinnamon rolls I smell?" "Fresh out of the oven. Stop by after work." "I will try, though you know how busy Tuesdays can be at the clinic." Mrs. Chen laughed. "I will save you one anyway. You work too hard, you know. A woman your age should be retired, enjoying life." Stephanie smiled but said nothing. Work was not a burden to her. It was salvation. The idea of retirement, of empty days with too much time to think about the past, held no appeal. She continued down Main Street, passing the hardware store where old Mr. Jenkins was already arranging tools in the window display, the coffee shop where the morning regulars gathered, and the small library that doubled as a community center. Each building held memories of quiet interactions, of a life carefully constructed to be pleasant but unremarkable. This was her life now. Simple, safe, predictable. Nothing like the high-pressure world of military medical research she had left behind. Nothing like the laboratories where one mistake could cost lives. The veterinary clinic sat on the edge of town, a cheerful blue building with a large yard where animals could play during their visits. Dr. Robert Patterson had owned the clinic for 30 years, and he had hired Stephanie 23 years ago without asking too many questions about her past. He saw only what mattered: her gentle way with animals and her surprising knowledge of animal biology and medicine. "Morning, Stephanie," Dr. Patterson greeted her as she entered. He was a robust man in his early 70s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "We have a busy day ahead. The Morrison's dog needs his vaccinations, Mrs. Taylor's cat has been acting strange, and the Henderson farm is bringing in their horse for a checkup." Stephanie hung up her coat and put on her work apron, the familiar fabric soft from years of washing. "I am ready. How are you feeling today, Robert?" Dr. Patterson waved his hand dismissively. "Just a bit tired. Getting old, I suppose. Thank goodness I have you to help keep this place running." She noticed he looked more tired than usual, the lines around his eyes deeper. "Are you sure you are feeling all right? You can tell me if something is wrong." "Just did not sleep well last night. You know how it is at our age." He smiled to reassure her, but Stephanie made a mental note to watch him more carefully. Dr. Patterson never complained, which sometimes meant he ignored his own health needs. The day passed in a familiar rhythm. Stephanie prepared examination rooms, comforted nervous animals, assisted with procedures, and managed the clinic's records. She had a special gift with frightened animals. Where others saw aggression or fear, she saw pain and confusion. Her calm presence could soothe even the most anxious dog or hostile cat. Each animal that came through the clinic doors received her full attention. She spoke to them in soft tones, moved slowly to avoid startling them, and always let them approach her first rather than forcing interaction. It was a technique she had learned through years of patient observation, understanding that trust had to be earned, not demanded. "You have magic hands," Mrs. Morrison commented as Stephanie gently held her trembling terrier while Dr. Patterson administered the vaccine. "Bruno is usually so difficult at the vet, but he is calm as can be with you." "Animals sense when someone cares about them," Stephanie replied softly, stroking Bruno's ears. "They just need to know they are safe." Bruno licked her hand, his tail wagging slightly despite his nervousness. Mrs. Morrison beamed. "See? He never does that with anyone else. You truly have a gift, Stephanie." After the Morrisons left, Dr. Patterson looked at Stephanie with curiosity. "You know, in all these years, you have never told me where you learned so much about animal medicine. You could have been a veterinarian yourself." Stephanie's smile remained pleasant, but something flickered in her eyes. "I had some biology training in my youth. Nothing formal. I just love animals." It was the same answer she always gave, vague enough to satisfy curiosity without revealing truth. Dr. Patterson nodded and moved on to the next patient. He had learned long ago not to push. The truth was far more complicated. Stephanie Boyd had not just studied biology. She had been Dr. Stephanie Boyd, one of the military's leading researchers in zoonotic diseases, illnesses that could jump from animals to humans. She had worked in Level 4 biosafety laboratories, studying some of the most dangerous pathogens on Earth. She had advised generals and consulted with international health organizations. Her research had taken her to outbreak sites around the world. She had studied Ebola in Africa, analyzed bird flu in Asia, investigated mysterious infections in remote villages. She had published over 40 peer-reviewed papers, presented at international conferences, and trained dozens of young researchers. She had been at the top of her field, respected and sought after. And then came the accident. Even now, 25 years later, she could remember every detail. The containment failure, the alarms, the scramble to protect her team, the colleague who had been exposed, the investigation that followed, the conclusion that Dr. Boyd's protocols, while not technically wrong, could have been better, should have been better. Her colleague survived, but with permanent health complications. Others in the lab had been terrified. Stephanie's confidence had shattered. She had resigned before they could question her fitness to continue, packed up her life in Washington, and disappeared. The nightmares had been worst in those first few years. She would wake up gasping, hearing the alarms, seeing her colleague's face as he realized he had been exposed. Over time, the nightmares came less frequently, but they never truly stopped. Even now, 2 decades later, she occasionally woke in the middle of the night with her heart racing, the phantom smell of the laboratory in her nostrils. She had chosen Golden Meadow because it was small, remote, and peaceful. A place where Dr. Stephanie Boyd, military researcher, could become simply Stephanie, the veterinary assistant who loved animals and kept to herself. That evening, Stephanie walked home through the town square. The Golden Meadow Farmers Market was setting up for the weekend. Vendors were arranging their stalls, displaying fresh vegetables, homemade jams, and local crafts. The evening air was warm and pleasant, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers. "Stephanie!" called Tom Henderson, one of the larger farm owners in the area. "How are you this evening?" "Very well, Tom. How is Thunder doing?" She had helped care for his prize stallion just that morning. "Right as rain, thanks to you and Doc Patterson. That horse means the world to my daughter Sarah. She would be heartbroken if anything happened to him. Thunder is strong and healthy. Sarah takes excellent care of him." Tom smiled warmly. "We are lucky to have you in Golden Meadow, Stephanie. You are one of the good ones." As she continued home, Stephanie reflected on how different her life was now. In her previous career, she had worked with teams of brilliant scientists, published groundbreaking research, and traveled to international conferences. Now her world was this small town, this veterinary clinic, these simple daily interactions. And yet, there was peace here, a peace she had not known in those final terrible months at the laboratory. No urgent calls at 3 a.m. about outbreak emergencies. No pressure to publish before competitors. No constant awareness that lives depended on her being perfect. She prepared a simple dinner of soup and bread, then settled into her favorite chair with a book. Outside, the sun set over Golden Meadow, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Tomorrow would be another quiet day at the clinic. Another day of helping animals and blending invisibly into this community that had become her home. She did not know that everything was about to change. 3 days later, Stephanie was organizing supply cabinets when Tom Henderson rushed into the clinic with his daughter Sarah. The 15-year-old girl was crying. "Dr. Patterson! Stephanie? Something is wrong with Thunder." Dr. Patterson emerged from his office, and Stephanie immediately moved to comfort Sarah. "What happened?" "He will not eat," Sarah sobbed. "And he seems weak. He was fine yesterday, but this morning he would not even stand up properly. I tried giving him his favorite treats, but he just looked at them. He never refuses food. Never." The panic in Sarah's voice was palpable. Stephanie gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "We will help him. Tell me everything you noticed this morning." Sarah wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "When I went to the stable at 6, he was lying down. That is not unusual, but when I called him, he did not get up right away like he normally does. When he finally stood, his legs seemed shaky. His eyes looked different somehow, not as bright. And he feels warm. We need to see him right away," Dr. Patterson said, grabbing his medical bag. "Stephanie, come with me." They drove to the Henderson farm in Dr. Patterson's truck, Sarah and her father following behind in their car. The 10-minute drive felt much longer. Stephanie watched the familiar countryside roll by, her mind already running through possibilities. Equine influenza, colic, poisoning from toxic plants, bacterial infection. There were dozens of potential causes. The farm was one of the largest in the area, with extensive pastures and multiple barns. Thunder was kept in the main stable, a beautiful building that housed the farm's prize horses. The smell of hay and horses was strong as they entered, familiar and usually comforting. When they entered Thunder's stall, Stephanie's trained eye immediately noticed the symptoms. The stallion was standing, but his head hung low. His breathing was slightly labored, and he showed no interest in the food in his trough. His coat, usually glossy and well-groomed, looked dull. Dr. Patterson conducted a thorough examination, while Stephanie took notes and monitored the horse's vital signs. His temperature was elevated at 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Not dangerously high, but definitely above normal. His heart rate was faster than normal at 72 beats per minute. It could be a viral infection, Dr. Patterson said thoughtfully. Or possibly something he ate. Stephanie, what do you think? Stephanie studied Thunder carefully. Something about the presentation bothered her, but she could not quite identify what. She ran her hands gently along his neck, feeling for swelling. She examined his gums, noting the color and moisture. She listened to his breathing, counting the rate and depth. The symptoms are somewhat general, she said slowly. We should run some blood tests to be certain. Agreed? Stephanie, can you collect the samples? She moved efficiently, her hands steady as she collected blood and other samples. Thunder stood quietly, seeming to trust her despite his discomfort. As she worked, she noticed small details. Slight swelling in the lymph nodes along his neck, minor inflammation around the gums, subtle changes in the eyes, a slight cloudiness that should not be there. These were not random observations. They were the kind of systematic assessment she had performed thousands of times in her old life, looking for patterns, searching for connections. The clinical detective work that had once defined her career was resurfacing despite her efforts to keep it buried. Let us get these samples to the lab, Dr. Patterson said. In the meantime, keep Thunder comfortable and well hydrated. Call me immediately if his condition worsens. Sarah had been watching anxiously from the stall door. He will be okay, right? Stephanie wanted to give reassurances, but honesty was more important. We are going to do everything we can to help him. The tests will tell us more about what we are dealing with. As they drove back to the clinic, Stephanie stared out the window, her mind working. Something felt wrong. The pattern of symptoms reminded her of something, but the memory was buried under 25 years of deliberate forgetting. You are quiet, Dr. Patterson observed. Just thinking. Thunder's symptoms are unusual, not exactly matching any common equine illness I know. You noticed that too? Well, the blood tests should tell us more. But when the results came back 2 days later, they only deepened the mystery. Thunder showed signs of infection, but the specific pathogen could not be identified with the clinic's basic laboratory capabilities. His white blood cell count was elevated, indicating his body was fighting something. But what? We might need to send samples to the state veterinary lab, Dr. Patterson said, frowning at the results. This is beyond our equipment. Before they could make that decision, more animals became sick. Mrs. Carmichael's dairy cows began showing similar symptoms. Then the Petersons' sheep. Within a week, animals on 5 different farms were affected. All showed the same pattern: fever, lethargy, loss of appetite, and subtle signs of systemic inflammation. The progression alarmed Stephanie. This was not random. This was an outbreak, following a pattern that suggested a common source. The town began to worry. Golden Meadow's economy depended heavily on agriculture. If a serious disease was spreading through the livestock, it could devastate the community. Farmers gathered in small groups on Main Street, sharing concerns and theories. The coffee shop buzzed with worried conversations. Dr. Patterson worked tirelessly, visiting farms and examining sick animals, but he struggled to identify the cause. The state lab was overwhelmed with samples from across the region, and results would take weeks. Each day brought new cases, new worried calls, new frightened animal owners. Stephanie assisted with every case, carefully documenting symptoms, collecting samples, and providing supportive care to the sick animals. But privately, her concern grew. The pattern of illness was becoming clearer, and it triggered memories she had tried to bury. She began spending her evenings researching, using her home computer to access veterinary databases and scientific journals. She told herself she was just being thorough, just trying to help Dr. Patterson. But deep down, she knew she was slipping back into old habits, thinking like the researcher she used to be. Her small home office, rarely used except for paying bills, became a research station. She created spreadsheets tracking cases, mapping affected farms, noting the timeline of symptom onset. She drew diagrams showing potential transmission routes. She reviewed scientific literature on livestock diseases, bacterial infections, waterborne pathogens. One evening, as she reviewed her notes, a pattern emerged. The affected farms all drew water from the same tributary of the Meadow Creek. The symptoms matched a specific category of zoonotic bacterial infections, and the timeline suggested a common source of contamination. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote down her conclusions. She had not done this kind of analysis in 25 years. The familiar rush of connecting data points, forming hypotheses, designing investigations, it both thrilled and terrified her. What if she was wrong? What if her skills had deteriorated? What if she made another mistake? But what if she was right, and the illness continued to spread because she had stayed silent? The next morning, Dr. Patterson looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. 2 more farms reported sick animals last night, he told Stephanie. I do not know what to do. The state lab still has not gotten back to us, and I am running out of ideas. Stephanie took a deep breath. This was the moment. She could stay silent, safe in her anonymity. Or she could speak up and risk revealing herself. Robert, I think I might have some insights. May I share them with you? Of course. Any ideas would be welcome right now. I have been reviewing all our cases, and I noticed that all the affected farms share a common water source. I think we might be dealing with a waterborne bacterial infection, possibly in the Leptospira family. Dr. Patterson's eyebrows rose. Leptospirosis? That is a pretty specific diagnosis. What makes you think so? The symptom pattern matches. The timeline fits with waterborne contamination. And if I am right, we need to act quickly because this disease can spread to humans. How do you know so much about this? Dr. Patterson asked, studying her with new curiosity. Stephanie hesitated. This was it. The moment where she either continued hiding or stepped back into who she used to be. I did more than just basic biology training in my youth. I had some experience with disease research. I can help if you trust me. Dr. Patterson looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. I have trusted you for 23 years, Stephanie. I am not going to stop now. What do you need? I need to collect specific water samples from the creek. I need access to a better microscope than what we have here. And I need to test my theory before we alarm the entire town. The high school has a good science lab. I know the principal. I can get you access. That afternoon, Stephanie found herself in a laboratory for the first time in 25 years. Her hands shook as she prepared samples and adjusted the microscope. The familiar smell of the lab, the precise movements of scientific investigation, it all came flooding back. The high school science lab was modest compared to the sophisticated facilities she had worked in before, but it was adequate. The microscope was a decent quality. The basic supplies were available. She worked methodically, preparing slides, adjusting light levels, focusing the lens, and there, under the microscope, she found what she was looking for, the distinctive spiraled bacteria that confirmed her hypothesis. Robert, she said quietly, still staring through the microscope. We have a leptospirosis outbreak. We need to act now. Dr. Patterson organized an emergency meeting with the affected farmers and town officials. The community center filled with worried faces. Tom Henderson was there, along with Mrs. Carmichael, the Petersons, and several other farm owners. Mayor Williams presided over the meeting, her normally cheerful face grave with concern. The community center was packed. Stephanie estimated at least 80 people had shown up, far more than attended typical town meetings. The anxiety in the room was palpable. People spoke in hushed, worried tones. Some farmers looked angry, frustrated by the uncertainty. Others simply looked scared. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Dr. Patterson began. "We believe we have identified the illness affecting our livestock." "Stephanie, would you explain?" All eyes turned to Stephanie. She stood slowly, her heart pounding. She had not spoken to a group like this since her last conference presentation 26 years ago. But these were not fellow scientists. These were her neighbors, her friends, people whose livelihoods were at stake. She walked to the front of the room, feeling the weight of their stares. Her mouth was dry, her palms sweaty. But as she began to speak, years of training took over. "The animals are suffering from leptospirosis," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "It is a bacterial infection that spreads through contaminated water. I found the bacteria in samples from the Meadow Creek tributary that supplies water to the affected farms." She paused, letting that sink in. Several people exchanged glances. "How dangerous is this?" Tom Henderson asked. "Will Thunder recover?" "With proper treatment, most animals should recover fully. The greater concern is preventing the spread. Leptospirosis can infect humans too, especially people who work closely with animals or water sources." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. A woman in the back called out, "Are our children at risk?" "If you follow basic hygiene practices, washing hands thoroughly after handling animals, avoiding direct contact with animal urine, being careful around the creek, the risk to people is low, but we need to take this seriously." Mayor Williams raised her hand for quiet. "What do we do?" "We need to find the source of contamination and eliminate it," Stephanie explained. "Then treat all affected animals and prevent new infections by providing clean water sources." "And you are certain about this diagnosis?" The question came from Jim Carter, a dairy farmer who had not yet reported sick animals, but whose farm also used the creek water. Stephanie met his skeptical gaze. "I have confirmed it under microscope examination. The state lab will verify when they complete their tests. But we cannot afford to wait. Every day of delay means more sick animals and greater risk to people." "But who are you exactly?" Jim pressed. "No offense, but you are Dr. Patterson's assistant. How do you know about this stuff?" The question hung in the air. Stephanie could feel everyone watching her, waiting. Dr. Patterson stood beside her. "I trust Stephanie's analysis completely. She has proven her knowledge repeatedly over the years." "But where did this come from?" Mrs. Carmichael asked. "The creek has been fine for decades. Why now?" "That is what we need to investigate," Stephanie replied. "Something has contaminated the water recently. It could be waste from infected wildlife, agricultural runoff, or other sources. We need to trace the creek upstream and find where the bacteria is entering the water system." She pulled out a map she had prepared, showing the creek and the affected farms. Using a pointer, she demonstrated the pattern of infections, the shared water source, the likely contamination zone. "I have created a systematic survey plan. We will collect water samples at regular intervals going upstream. By analyzing bacterial concentration in each sample, we can trace back to the source." Her presentation was clear, methodical, professional. She was back in her element, and despite her nervousness, it felt good. Mayor Williams nodded decisively. "What do you need?" "I need a small team to help me survey the creek. We should collect water samples at intervals going upstream until we find where the contamination begins. We also need to implement immediate protective measures for the farms." "I will help," Tom Henderson volunteered immediately. "Thunder is like family, whatever it takes." "Me too," added Sarah, Tom's daughter. "I want to help save the animals." Others volunteered as well. By the end of the meeting, Stephanie had a team of volunteers and the town's full support. As people filed out, many stopped to thank her, to express their confidence in her. But Jim Carter remained skeptical. He approached Stephanie as she was packing up her materials. "I do not mean to be rude, but this is serious. Are you really qualified to be making these diagnoses?" Stephanie looked at him steadily. "I understand your concern. You want to protect your animals and your livelihood. I have extensive training in disease research and epidemiology. I would not have spoken up if I was not confident in my analysis." "What kind of training?" "The kind that involved years of studying exactly these types of diseases. That is all I can say right now, but I promise you I know what I am doing." Dr. Patterson pulled her aside after Jim left. "You were impressive up there." "I have never seen that side of you." Stephanie smiled faintly. "I used to give presentations like that regularly, a long time ago. I get the feeling there is a lot about your past you have never shared." "Perhaps. But right now, the past does not matter. We have work to do." The next morning, Stephanie met her volunteer team at the clinic. She had prepared a detailed plan for the creek survey, marking potential sampling sites on a map. She had also created protocols for collecting and labeling samples, drawing on methodologies she had not used in decades. Tom Henderson arrived with Sarah and several other farmers. Jim Carter showed up too, bringing his teenage son. Even Mrs. Chen from the bakery came, carrying containers of food for the team. "Everyone needs to eat," she said firmly. "Heroes do their best work on full stomachs." Stephanie was not used to being called a hero. She was just trying to fix a problem, to use her knowledge for good instead of living with regret over past mistakes. She distributed the equipment and explained the procedures. "We will work in teams of 3. Each team takes a section of the creek. Collect samples every quarter mile. Label them with location and time. Note any unusual observations. Do not wade into the water without rubber boots. Do not touch the water with bare hands. Safety first." They divided into 3 teams, each responsible for surveying different sections of the creek. Stephanie led one team, while Dr. Patterson coordinated from the clinic. They worked systematically, collecting water samples every quarter mile, carefully documenting locations and noting any unusual features. The work was physically demanding. The creek wound through meadows, forests, and rocky terrain. They waded through cold water, pushed through dense brush, and climbed over fallen logs. Stephanie, at 66, found herself breathing hard, but she pushed on. This was important. This mattered. Her team consisted of Tom Henderson and a young farmer named Marcus. Both men were fit and used to physical labor, but they respectfully slowed their pace to accommodate her. "You doing okay, Stephanie?" Tom asked as they navigated a particularly steep bank. "Fine. I may not be as spry as I once was, but I am stubborn enough to keep up." Marcus laughed. "My grandmother says the same thing. She is 72 and still works her garden every day." As they moved upstream, Stephanie taught her team what to look for: discoloration in the water, unusual odors, dead vegetation, signs of animal waste, anything that might indicate contamination. Sarah proved to be an excellent observer. "Miss Stephanie, look at this," she called, pointing to a section of bank where the soil looked different. "Is this normal?" Stephanie examined the area carefully. The soil was darker, more saturated, and there was a faint smell. "Good eye, Sarah. This could be significant. Let us collect samples here." They worked until dusk, then returned to the clinic to process their findings. Stephanie set up a makeshift laboratory in the clinic's storage room, using borrowed equipment from the high school and her own carefully preserved knowledge. As she examined samples under the microscope, her team gathered around, watching with fascination. It reminded her of teaching moments from her old career, when she would train junior researchers. "How do you know what you are looking at?" Jim Carter asked. He had joined them at the clinic, curious, despite his earlier skepticism. "Years of practice," Stephanie replied, adjusting the focus. "Each type of bacteria has distinctive features: size, shape, movement patterns. You learn to recognize them. See this one?" She gestured to the microscope. The spiral shape is characteristic of Leptospira. The way it moves, almost like a corkscrew, confirms it. "Where did you learn all this?" Stephanie paused, then decided to share a small truth. "I used to work in medical research. A long time ago. Different life." "Why did you stop?" "I made mistakes. People got hurt. I could not continue after that." The room fell quiet. Finally, Tom Henderson spoke. "We all make mistakes, Stephanie. What matters is what you do after. Right now, you are using what you learned to help us. That is what counts." His words touched something deep inside her. For 25 years, she had defined herself by her failure. Perhaps it was time to start defining herself by what she could still do. Over the next 3 days, they surveyed the entire length of the creek that flowed through Golden Meadow. The work was exhausting, but satisfying. Stephanie's systematic approach paid off. By correlating bacterial concentrations in different samples, she traced the contamination to a specific area about 3 miles upstream from the town. Each evening, she analyzed the samples, creating charts and graphs showing bacterial density at different points. The pattern was clear. Concentrations increased dramatically at a specific location, suggesting that was the source. The source turned out to be an old, forgotten cattle grazing area that had been abandoned years ago. Recent heavy rains had eroded the soil, exposing decades-old waste deposits. The bacteria from this waste had leached into the creek, creating the outbreak. When they finally identified the site, Tom whistled low. "I remember this place. My father used to graze cattle here 40 years ago. I had completely forgotten about it." "Can it be fixed?" Mayor Williams asked when Stephanie presented her findings at another town meeting. "Yes, we need to contain the contamination site, treat the affected water, and provide clean water sources for the farms. It will take time and resources, but it is absolutely possible." "What about the animals that are already sick?" "Leptospirosis responds well to antibiotics. Dr. Patterson and I can treat them. The sooner we start, the better the outcomes." The town mobilized quickly. The state environmental agency sent a team to properly remediate the contamination site. The farms installed temporary water systems using clean sources. And Stephanie and Dr. Patterson began treating the sick animals. Stephanie prepared detailed treatment plans for each animal, adjusting medications based on the severity of symptoms and the specific needs of different species. She monitored progress carefully, making modifications as needed. The work was intensive, requiring long hours and careful attention. Thunder was among the first to recover. Sarah cried tears of joy when the stallion finally ate a full meal and showed his usual spirited personality. The horse nuzzled Sarah's shoulder, and she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Thank you, Miss Stephanie," Sarah said, hugging her tightly afterward. "You saved him. You saved them all." But the work was not done. Stephanie implemented a monitoring program to ensure no new cases emerged. She trained farmers on how to recognize early symptoms. She created guidelines for water safety. She was thinking and acting like the researcher she used to be, but with a crucial difference. Now she was not locked in a laboratory pursuing abstract knowledge. She was helping real people, protecting real animals, serving a community she loved. And for the first time in 25 years, she felt like she was truly making amends. 2 weeks after the outbreak was contained, Dr. Patterson called Stephanie into his office. He looked serious, and her heart sank. Was he going to ask her to leave? Had her past finally caught up with her? "Sit down, Stephanie," he said gently. "We need to talk." She sat, hands folded in her lap, preparing for the worst. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had someone from her past recognized her name? Had the state lab raised questions about her qualifications? "I received a call this morning," Dr. Patterson continued, "from Dr. Sarah Mitchell at the State Veterinary Laboratory. She was very impressed with the samples and documentation you provided. She said the quality of your work was extraordinary, at the level of professional research scientists." Stephanie said nothing, waiting. She asked about you, wanted to know your background. "So I did some research of my own." He pulled out a folder. Dr. Stephanie Boyd, distinguished military medical researcher, published dozens of papers on zoonotic diseases, worked at the Army Medical Research Institute, resigned 25 years ago following a laboratory accident. Tears stung Stephanie's eyes. "I am sorry I lied to you." "You did not lie. You just did not tell me everything. There is a difference." Dr. Patterson's voice was kind. "What happened, Stephanie? The real story?" And so she told him. Everything. The pressure of the work, the long hours, the constant awareness that one mistake could have terrible consequences, the day the containment system failed, the colleague who was exposed, the investigation that followed, the guilt that consumed her. She told him about the sleepless nights, the constant anxiety, the way she had questioned every decision she made in those final months. She described the moment she decided to resign, the feeling of her entire identity crumbling. "I resigned before they could question my competence," she finished. "I could not face the possibility of making another mistake, so I ran. I became someone else, someone small and safe." "And for 25 years, you hid your extraordinary abilities because you were afraid of failing again." "Yes." Dr. Patterson leaned back in his chair, silent for a moment. "Stephanie, do you know why I hired you 23 years ago?" "You needed help?" "I needed help, yes. But I hired you because I saw something in your eyes. Pain, certainly. But also compassion. And a deep, almost desperate need to do something good. I did not know your story, but I knew you were running from something. And I figured if you wanted to spend your life helping animals, that was good enough for me. I thought you would be angry that I kept the truth from you." "How could I be angry? You have been the best assistant I could have asked for. You have helped thousands of animals over the years, and now you have saved this entire community. Your past does not change any of that. But the laboratory accident was 25 years ago, and from what you have told me, it was not even entirely your fault. Containment systems fail. Protocols have gaps. Science is conducted by humans, and humans make mistakes. People were hurt because of me. People were hurt because of an accident in a dangerous field. You were not careless. You were not negligent. You were a scientist working at the highest levels of a complex discipline. Stephanie, you have punished yourself for 25 years. Do not you think that is enough?" His words cracked something open inside her. The tears she had held back for so long finally came. Dr. Patterson handed her a tissue and waited patiently while she cried. The release was overwhelming, years of suppressed emotion finally finding an outlet. "The question now," he said when she had composed herself, "is what happens next. The town knows you are remarkable. Word is spreading about what you did. People are asking questions. I do not want fame. I just want my quiet life. I understand. But your quiet life has changed, whether you want it to or not. The town council wants to honor you at next week's community gathering. Dr. Mitchell from the state lab wants to consult with you on similar outbreaks in other regions. And the farmers are calling you their hero. I am not a hero. I just did what needed to be done. That is exactly what heroes say. Stephanie wiped her eyes. I do not know how to be that person anymore. The confident researcher, the expert. I left her behind. Maybe you did not leave her behind. Maybe she has been here all along, hiding, healing, and now she is ready to come back. What if I fail again? What if someone gets hurt because of me? What if someone gets hurt because you are too afraid to use your abilities? Stephanie, you could have stayed quiet during this outbreak. You could have hidden your knowledge. But you did not. You stepped up because it was the right thing to do. That took courage. She thought about his words. For 25 years, she had believed that the safest thing was to hide, to be small, to never risk failure again. But in hiding, she had also hidden the good she could do. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need. But please, think about this. Maybe it is time to stop punishing yourself for being human. Maybe it is time to accept that you have gifts that can help people, and that using those gifts is worth the risk of imperfection. That evening, Stephanie walked to the meadow at the edge of town. The grass was golden in the late afternoon sun, giving the place its name. She had walked here countless times over the years, finding peace in the quiet beauty. The meadow was her thinking place. When the weight of her past became too heavy, she would come here and walk among the tall grasses, watching the wind create waves across the field. Sometimes she would sit on the old wooden bench someone had placed years ago, watching the sun set. She thought about Dr. Patterson's words. She thought about Sarah's joy when Thunder recovered. She thought about Tom Henderson saying, "We all make mistakes. What matters is what you do after." For 25 years, what she had done after her mistake was hide, run, pretend to be someone else. But during the outbreak, she had been herself again. The real Stephanie Boyd, the researcher, the problem solver, the woman who saw patterns and found solutions, and it had felt right. Terrifying, yes, but also right. Her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Hello? Is this Dr. Stephanie Boyd? A woman's voice, professional and warm. Yes. Who is calling? Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the State Veterinary Laboratory. I hope you do not mind, but Dr. Patterson gave me your number. I am calling about the excellent work you did on the leptospirosis outbreak in Golden Meadow. Oh, thank you. I am being completely serious when I say your documentation and analysis were among the best I have seen. The systematic approach, the careful sampling protocols, the precise identification. It was truly impressive. May I ask where you trained? I worked for the Military Medical Research Program many years ago. I thought I recognized the methodology. We are experiencing similar outbreaks in 3 other counties, and frankly, we are overwhelmed. Would you be willing to consult with us, review our data, maybe help us develop response protocols? Stephanie's first instinct was to say no, to protect herself, to stay safe. But then she thought about animals suffering in those other counties. People worried about their livelihoods, communities at risk. I would need to think about it. Of course, please take my number. Call me anytime. Dr. Boyd, you have skills that could help a lot of animals and people. It would be a shame to waste them. After the call ended, Stephanie stood in the meadow as the sun set. She was 66 years old. For 25 of those years, she had been running, hiding, playing it safe. Maybe Dr. Patterson was right. Maybe it was time to stop running. She thought about all the paths her life had taken, the brilliant young researcher full of confidence, the devastated scientist fleeing from failure, the quiet veterinary assistant building a peaceful life, and now, perhaps, something new, someone who integrated all those parts into a whole person. She pulled out her phone and texted Dr. Mitchell. "I would like to discuss the consulting opportunity. When can we talk?" The response came quickly. "Tomorrow afternoon? I can call you at 2 p.m., Stephanie confirmed, then put her phone away. She sat on the bench, watching the last light fade from the sky. The stars began to appear, countless points of light in the darkness. She had been hiding in darkness for 25 years. Maybe it was time to become a point of light herself. The following Saturday, the entire town gathered in the community center for their monthly meeting. But tonight was special. Tonight was different. Stephanie arrived early, her stomach full of butterflies. Sarah Henderson had insisted on helping her choose an outfit, declaring that heroes needed to look the part. She wore a simple blue dress, and her silver hair was down for once, soft around her shoulders. Sarah had shown up at her cottage that afternoon with 3 different dresses. "You cannot wear your work clothes to this, Miss Stephanie. This is important." They had settled on the blue dress, which Stephanie had bought years ago, but rarely worn. Sarah had even convinced her to let her hair down, brushing it until it shone. "You look beautiful," Dr. Patterson said when he saw her. "I look terrified." "That too, but mostly beautiful." The community center filled quickly. It seemed like everyone in Golden Meadow had come. Farmers she had helped, townspeople she had known for years, even people from neighboring areas who had heard about the outbreak and its resolution. Mrs. Chen approached her with tears in her eyes. "I am so proud of you, dear. We all are." The room buzzed with conversation. Stephanie recognized faces everywhere: the postmaster, the owner of the hardware store, the librarian, the pastor from the community church, all here for this. Mayor Williams called the meeting to order. "We are here tonight to honor someone very special, someone who has been part of our community for over 2 decades, someone who, we recently discovered, has been hiding her light under a bushel." Stephanie felt her face flush as people turned to look at her. 3 weeks ago, our community faced a crisis. Our animals were getting sick, our farms were threatened, and we did not know what to do. One person stepped forward with knowledge, skill, and courage to solve the problem. "Stephanie Boyd, would you please come up here?" Stephanie walked to the front on shaky legs. Sarah Henderson was grinning at her from the front row. Tom stood next to his daughter, giving her a thumbs up. Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Stephanie," Mayor Williams continued, "we have learned that you are not just our beloved veterinary assistant. You are Dr. Stephanie Boyd, a distinguished medical researcher who chose to make Golden Meadow her home. You could have stayed quiet when our animals got sick. You could have hidden your expertise. Instead, you used everything you knew to help us. You identified the disease, found its source, and guided us through the crisis. Because of you, our animals are healthy, and our farms are safe." The room erupted in applause. Stephanie felt tears threatening again. "On behalf of the entire community, I want to present you with this plaque recognizing you as Golden Meadow's Citizen of the Year. But more than that, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of our town. Thank you for caring about us. And thank you for showing us that it is never too late to step into your true calling." Stephanie accepted the plaque with trembling hands. She looked out at the crowd, at all these people she had lived among for 25 years. People who had accepted her without question, who had become her friends, her family. "I do not know what to say," she began, her voice wavering. "When I came to Golden Meadow 25 years ago, I was running from my past. I had made mistakes in my previous career, and I was afraid of making more. So I tried to become invisible, to be small and safe." She paused, gathering her courage. The room was completely silent, everyone listening. But this community would not let me stay invisible. You welcomed me. You trusted me with your beloved animals. You showed me kindness every day. And when the crisis came, you trusted me again, even though you did not know my full story. You did not just save our animals, Tom Henderson called out. You taught us about courage, about using our abilities to help others even when we are scared. I learned that from you, Stephanie replied. From watching how this community takes care of each other. From seeing Sarah's devotion to Thunder. From Dr. Patterson's faith in me all these years. You taught me that mistakes do not define us. What we do after mistakes, that is what matters. She looked down at the plaque, then back at the crowd. The weight of their attention was overwhelming, but also somehow supportive. These people genuinely cared about her. I came here to hide, but you helped me heal. And now, thanks to you, I am ready to stop hiding. Dr. Mitchell from the State Veterinary Laboratory has asked me to help with similar outbreaks in other areas. I would like to do that, not full-time. I am not giving up my job at the clinic. She smiled at Dr. Patterson. But as a consultant, using my skills to help where I can. The applause was thunderous. People stood, clapping and cheering. Sarah ran up and hugged her. Others followed, creating a line of people wanting to congratulate her, thank her, share their stories. Mrs. Chen was crying openly. I knew there was something special about you the first day you came into my bakery 23 years ago. You had sad eyes, but kind ones. I am so glad you stayed. Where else would I go? Stephanie asked, hugging her back. This is my home. Jim Carter, the skeptical farmer, approached her. I owe you an apology. I questioned your qualifications. I was wrong. You were protecting your livelihood. That is not wrong. It is responsible. Still, I should have trusted you sooner. Thank you for what you did. Later that evening, after the formal gathering ended, a smaller group gathered at the Henderson farm. Tom had organized a celebratory barbecue, and the warm summer night was perfect for an outdoor gathering. The Henderson farm was beautiful in the evening light. String lights hung between the barn and the house, creating a festive atmosphere. Long tables were set up with food, and people milled about, talking and laughing. Stephanie found herself surrounded by the people who had helped during the outbreak. Jim Carter and his son, Sarah and her friends from school, Dr. Patterson and his wife. Even Dr. Mitchell had driven out from the state capitol to meet her in person. I meant what I said on the phone, Dr. Mitchell told her as they sat together, watching the stars come out. Your work on this outbreak was exceptional. We desperately need expertise like yours. I am not sure I am ready for anything too demanding, Stephanie admitted. I have been out of research for a long time. You could have fooled me. The protocols you developed, the systematic approach you took, that is not something you forget. It is who you are. It is who I was. No, Dr. Mitchell said firmly. It is who you are. You just stopped letting yourself be that person, but you never lost the ability. Stephanie watched Sarah across the yard, laughing with her friends while Thunder grazed peacefully nearby. I spent 25 years afraid of making another mistake, afraid of hurting someone again. And in those 25 years, how many animals did you help at the clinic? Thousands, I suppose. Thousands of animals that might have suffered more or died without your care. And now you have saved an entire community. When are you going to forgive yourself for being human? It was the same question Dr. Patterson had asked, the same question she had been asking herself. I am trying, she said quietly. It is hard to let go of guilt I have carried so long. Then carry it differently, not as a burden that holds you back, but as a reminder to be careful, thoughtful, and compassionate. Use it to make you better, not to make you smaller. Sarah approached with a plate of food. Miss Stephanie, you need to eat. Dad made his famous ribs. Thank you, sweetheart. Stephanie accepted the plate, touched by the girl's care. Can I ask you something? Sarah sat down beside her. When you were working on finding what was making Thunder sick, were you scared? Terrified. But you did it anyway. I had to. Thunder needed help. All the animals needed help. That is what being brave means, right? Being scared but doing it anyway? Yes, that is exactly what it means. Sarah looked at her seriously, her young face earnest in the string lights. I want to be like you when I grow up, a scientist who helps animals. Stephanie's heart swelled. You would make an excellent scientist. You have a good eye for details, and you care deeply. Those are the most important qualities. Will you help me? Teach me things? I would be honored. As the evening wore on, Stephanie found herself truly relaxing for the first time in years. She was not hiding anymore. People knew her story, or at least the important parts, and they had not rejected her. Instead, they celebrated her. Dr. Patterson raised a toast. To Stephanie Boyd, the woman who taught us that second chances are real, that past mistakes do not have to define our future, and that quiet heroes walk among us every day. To Stephanie! Everyone cheered. Stephanie felt something shift inside her. The weight she had carried for so long, the guilt, the shame, the fear, did not disappear entirely, but it felt different now, lighter, more manageable. She had spent 25 years punishing herself for being imperfect. Maybe it was time to accept that perfection was impossible. Maybe it was enough to be someone who tried her best, learned from her mistakes, and used her abilities to help others. Maybe it was enough to be human. Monday morning, Stephanie returned to work at the clinic feeling different. The same routine, preparing exam rooms, greeting patients, assisting Dr. Patterson, but with a new sense of purpose. You are smiling more, Dr. Patterson observed. It suits you. I feel lighter, like I have been carrying a heavy bag for years and finally put it down. Good. And speaking of new things, I have a proposition for you. He led her to his office where a computer displayed architectural plans. What is this? Plans to expand the clinic. Add a proper laboratory for more advanced diagnostic work. Create a research space. I am getting older, Stephanie. In a few years, I will want to retire. I would like to know the clinic will continue with someone who truly cares about animals and has the skills to take it to the next level. Are you asking me to take over the clinic? Eventually, yes. But first, I want us to be partners, expand our capabilities. You could do the research and complex diagnostics. I will handle the routine cases and help you remember to eat lunch. Stephanie laughed. When do I forget to eat lunch? Whenever you get focused on a problem, you become completely absorbed. It is wonderful to watch, but someone needs to make sure you take care of yourself. She studied the plans. They were ambitious. A new wing with a modern laboratory, office space, even a small teaching area. This would be expensive. I have been saving for years, and I spoke with the bank. They are willing to provide a loan, especially given the attention our clinic has received lately. Plus, I think we could get grants for the research component. You have thought this through. I have. What do you say? Partners? Stephanie felt a surge of emotion. Partnership. Equality. Recognition of her value. I accept. Partnership first, then we will see about the future. Excellent. Oh, and Dr. Mitchell called. She has 3 counties wanting to consult with you about potential disease outbreaks. I told her you would call her back. That afternoon, between patients, Stephanie called Dr. Mitchell and agreed to review data from the other outbreaks. She would work remotely when possible, visit in person when necessary, and always make sure her work at the clinic came first. The first consultation case arrived by email that evening. A county 2 hours north was seeing unusual illness in their sheep population. Stephanie reviewed the data, the symptoms, the timeline. She recognized patterns, formed hypotheses, and provided detailed recommendations. It felt good to use her skills again, to think deeply about complex problems, to apply her knowledge in ways that helped people and animals. Word spread beyond Golden Meadow. A journalist from the regional newspaper came to interview her. The story, titled "The Veterinary Assistant Who Saved a Town," was picked up by other papers. Stephanie received calls from veterinary schools asking if she would give guest lectures. A pharmaceutical company wanted to consult with her on a new animal vaccine. She said no to most requests. She was not ready for a full return to public life. But she said yes to the ones that felt right. A lecture at the state university. Consultation on a paper about zoonotic disease prevention. Training sessions for rural veterinarians on outbreak response. Sarah became her shadow on weekends, learning everything she could about animal medicine and research. Stephanie found she enjoyed teaching, sharing the knowledge she had kept locked away for so long. "Why did you stop being a researcher?" Sarah asked one Saturday as they cleaned exam rooms together. Stephanie had learned to answer this question honestly. "I made a mistake that hurt people. I felt so guilty that I could not imagine continuing. So I quit and hid for a very long time." "But you are not hiding anymore." "No, your town would not let me. You all pulled me back into the light. I am glad. The world needs people like you." The weeks passed in a blur of activity. Stephanie found herself busier than she had been in decades, but it was a fulfilling kind of busy. She worked at the clinic in the mornings, consulted on outbreak investigations in the afternoons, and spent evenings teaching Sarah or reviewing research. 3 months after the outbreak was resolved, Stephanie received an unexpected letter. It was from Dr. James Richardson, her former colleague, the one who had been injured in the laboratory accident 25 years ago. Her hands shook as she opened it. She had not heard from James since she resigned. Part of her had assumed he blamed her, hated her even. "Dear Stephanie, I recently read about your work in Golden Meadow. I am so proud of you. I always wondered what happened to you after you resigned. Many of us tried to find you, but you disappeared completely. I want you to know something I should have said 25 years ago. The accident was not your fault. The investigation cleared you. The containment failure was due to equipment malfunction, not procedural error. Your protocols were sound. I know you blamed yourself. I could see it in your eyes during the investigation. But Stephanie, you were an excellent researcher, one of the best I ever worked with. The accident was terrible, and yes, I was hurt. But I recovered. I continued my career. I published the research we were working on together. I had a good life. You, on the other hand, threw away a brilliant career because of misplaced guilt. I wish I had been strong enough to tell you this back then. I wish I had fought harder to make you see that you did not need to carry that burden. Reading about your work in Golden Meadow, I see you have finally found your way back to using your gifts. I am glad. The world needs scientists like you, people who combine technical excellence with genuine compassion. Please do not let the past define you any longer. You were not a failure then, and you certainly are not now. With deepest respect and friendship, James Stephanie read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. He had recovered. He had continued his career. He had forgiven her. No, there was nothing to forgive because it had not been her fault. 25 years of unnecessary guilt. 25 years of hiding from a mistake that was not even truly hers. She felt anger at first, anger at the investigation that had been ambiguous enough to leave room for doubt, anger at herself for not seeking clarification, anger at all the wasted years, then grief. For the researcher she could have been, for the contributions she might have made, for the time lost. But finally, acceptance. She could not get those years back, but she could make sure the years ahead were different. She wrote back to James that evening, thanking him for his words, sharing her story of Golden Meadow, and promising to stop punishing herself for being human. She also asked about his research, genuinely curious about what he had accomplished. His response came a week later, warm and filled with updates. They began corresponding regularly, rebuilding a friendship that had been severed by her flight and silence. 6 months after the outbreak, Golden Meadow hosted a regional conference on rural veterinary medicine and disease prevention. Dr. Patterson and Stephanie organized it together, bringing veterinarians, researchers, and farmers from across the state. The conference was held at the high school, the same place where Stephanie had first used a microscope in 25 years to identify the outbreak bacteria. Now that lab was upgraded, funded by grants Stephanie had helped secure, and it served as a teaching facility for local students interested in science. Organizing the conference had been an enormous undertaking. Stephanie and Dr. Patterson spent weeks planning sessions, inviting speakers, arranging accommodations, but seeing it come together was deeply satisfying. Stephanie gave the opening presentation. She no longer felt nervous speaking to groups. She had accepted that this was part of who she was meant to be. The auditorium was packed with over 200 attendees. Stephanie stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. Veterinarians, researchers, farmers, students, all here to learn. 25 years ago, I made a mistake that I thought ended my career, she began. I was wrong about that. What ended was my willingness to use my abilities, to contribute my knowledge, to risk being imperfect. The room was silent, everyone listening. I hid in a small town, doing work I loved, but operating at a fraction of my capacity. And then a crisis came. Animals were sick, people were worried, and I had to choose, stay hidden and safe, or step forward and risk making mistakes again. We all know what I chose, but what I want to share with you today is what I learned from that choice. I learned that our abilities are not ours to hoard. They are gifts meant to be shared, even if sharing them means risking failure. I learned that mistakes are part of science, part of life. They teach us, shape us, make us more careful and thoughtful, but they should not silence us. And I learned that communities, like Golden Meadow, can heal us if we let them. They can show us our worth when we have forgotten it ourselves. She presented her findings from the outbreak, the protocols she developed, and the lessons learned. But more than that, she told the story of ordinary people coming together to solve a crisis, of farmers who became citizen scientists, of a teenage girl who learned to observe carefully, of a town that refused to let her hide. She showed slides of the creek survey, the microscope images, the graphs tracking bacterial concentration. She explained her methodology in detail, making it accessible to the diverse audience. The presentation received a standing ovation. Afterwards, young veterinarians and researchers crowded around her, asking questions, seeking advice. "How did you handle being away from research for so long?" one young woman asked. "I never really left it," Stephanie replied. "I just practiced it differently. Every time I helped an animal at the clinic, I was applying scientific thinking. Observation, hypothesis, testing, evaluation. Research is not just what happens in laboratories. It is a way of thinking that can be applied anywhere." Dr. Mitchell pulled her aside during the lunch break. I have a proposition for you. The state wants to create a rapid response team for agricultural disease outbreaks. We need someone to lead it, someone with research expertise and practical experience, someone who understands both the science and the human elements. You want me to lead it? I cannot think of anyone better qualified. But I am 66 years old. So? You have more energy and sharper thinking than people half your age. Age is just a number, Stephanie. What matters is ability and dedication. Stephanie thought about it. A few months ago, she would have said no automatically. Too much responsibility, too much pressure, too much risk. But now, can I design the program, set the protocols, train the team? Absolutely. We want your expertise, not just your name. Then yes, I will do it. That evening, as the conference wound down, Stephanie walked through Golden Meadow. The town had changed in subtle ways since the outbreak. There was a new confidence, a sense that they could handle challenges because they had already overcome one together. New businesses had opened on Main Street. A second veterinary clinic, run by a recent graduate who had heard about the outbreak and wanted to be part of this community. A farm supply store that sold water testing kits, now standard practice among local farmers. She stopped at the meadow where she had done so much thinking over the years. The grass was golden in the setting sun, as beautiful as ever. Dr. Patterson found her there. Congratulations on the new position. Thank you. I am excited and terrified in equal measure. The perfect combination for important work. He stood beside her, looking at the view. You have come a long way from the woman who showed up at my clinic 23 years ago looking for a quiet job where she could hide. That woman was broken, scared, running from herself. That woman was healing. She just did not know it yet. Do you think we ever fully heal from our mistakes? Dr. Patterson considered this. I think healing is not about forgetting or erasing what happened. It is about integrating it, making it part of our story without letting it be the whole story. You had a laboratory accident? Yes. You also had 25 years of helping animals and people. You saved a town. You are building a new program to help others. That is your story. All of it. I like that perspective. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, reflecting off the golden grass. Dr. Patterson, thank you. For what? For hiring me without asking too many questions, for being patient with me, for believing in me even when I did not believe in myself. You are welcome, though I should thank you too. You made my clinic better. You made this town better. And you reminded me that everyone has depths we cannot see, stories we do not know. Never judge too quickly. Good advice. As darkness fell, they walked back to town together. Stephanie looked at the familiar streets, the houses with lights glowing in windows, the people she had known for decades. This was her home. These were her people. And finally, after all these years, she was fully present. Not hiding, not running, just living, working, contributing. She was Dr. Stephanie Boyd again, but better, wiser, more compassionate, more humble, and ready for whatever came next. 1 year after the outbreak, on a crisp autumn morning, Stephanie stood in front of the newly expanded Patterson Boyd Veterinary Center and Research Facility. The building had been renovated and extended, now housing not just examination rooms, but also a modern laboratory, a teaching facility, and office space for the regional rapid response team. The transformation was remarkable. What had been a simple blue building was now a professional complex. Glass walls in the laboratory allowed visitors to see science in action. The teaching space had tiered seating for lectures. The exam rooms were state-of-the-art. Dr. Patterson, now officially semi-retired, stood beside her at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Most of the town had come out for the occasion, along with representatives from the state veterinary program, local universities, and agricultural organizations. "I cannot believe this is real," Stephanie murmured. "Better start believing," Dr. Patterson replied with a smile. "You built this." "We built this. Together." Mayor Williams stepped forward to speak. "1 year ago, our town faced a crisis. Today, we celebrate not just our recovery, but our transformation. The Patterson-Boyd Center represents Golden Meadow's commitment to science, education, and service. It is a place where animals will be healed, where students will learn, and where researchers will develop solutions to help communities across our region." Sarah Henderson, now 16 and planning to study veterinary medicine in college, handed Stephanie the ceremonial scissors. "You should do the honors, Dr. Boyd." Stephanie cut the ribbon, and people applauded. They filed inside for tours of the new facility. The laboratory was equipped with modern microscopes, centrifuges, and diagnostic equipment. The teaching space had room for 20 students. The research offices were bright and welcoming. "This is where the magic happens," Stephanie told a group of high school students during the tour, showing them the laboratory. "Science is not just about fancy equipment. It is about asking good questions, making careful observations, and being willing to admit when you are wrong so you can learn and try again." One of the students, a shy girl with glasses, raised her hand. "Is it true you were afraid to come back to research?" Stephanie smiled. "Very afraid. I had made mistakes in my past work and I was terrified of making more. But I learned that fear of failure should not stop us from trying to do good. The key is to be careful, thoughtful, and humble. To work with others, to check and double check, and to remember that we are all human. But how do you know when to try again after you fail?" It was a profound question from someone so young. Stephanie considered her answer carefully. "I think you are ready when the fear of not trying becomes greater than the fear of failing. When you realize that your abilities can help others, and that help is more important than protecting yourself from potential mistakes." After the tours, there was a reception in the community center. Stephanie found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Former patients brought their healthy pets to show her. Farmers thanked her again for saving their animals. Colleagues from the rapid response team discussed upcoming projects. Dr. Mitchell pulled her aside. "I have news. The program you developed for outbreak response is being adopted as the state standard. They are calling it the Boyd Protocol." Stephanie felt a surge of pride. "Really?" "Really. Your systematic approach, your emphasis on community involvement, your protocols for rapid identification and containment, it is all being taught to veterinarians and agricultural specialists across the state. You have made a real difference. I had good teachers and good partners." She gestured to Dr. Patterson across the room. Jim Carter approached with his son. "Dr. Boyd, my boy here has been accepted to veterinary school. He says it is because you inspired him during the outbreak." "That is wonderful." Stephanie shook the young man's hand. "What inspired you specifically?" "Watching you work," he replied. "The way you explained things clearly, the way you stayed calm even when things were uncertain, the way you brought everyone together. That is the kind of veterinarian I want to be." The world needs veterinarians who care about communities as much as they care about animals. You will do well. Later, Stephanie stood on the clinic's back porch, taking a moment of quiet. The autumn leaves were brilliant colors, reds, oranges, yellows, and the air was crisp and clean. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. 26 years ago, she had fled Washington in shame and fear. She had hidden in Golden Meadow, doing good work, but always holding back, always afraid of being fully seen. The outbreak had changed everything. It had forced her to choose between safety and service. And in choosing service, she had discovered that she was still capable, still valuable, still able to contribute. But more than that, she had discovered she was not defined by her worst moment. The laboratory accident was part of her story, but it was not the whole story. She was also the woman who had helped thousands of animals at the clinic, the researcher who had identified and stopped an outbreak, the mentor who inspired young people to pursue science, the colleague who developed protocols to help communities across the state. She was all of these things, complex, imperfect, human, and that was enough. "There you are," Dr. Patterson joined her on the porch. "Hiding from your own party? Just taking it all in, thinking about how much has changed. And how much has stayed the same. You are still the same person who showed up 23 years ago, just not hiding anymore. Do you have any regrets? About your career, your choices?" Dr. Patterson thought about this. "I regret that I did not push you harder to own your abilities earlier. I saw your potential from the beginning, but I let you hide because I thought that was what you needed. I did need it. For a time, I needed to heal, to remember why I loved science in the first place, to reconnect with the joy of helping living creatures without the pressure of military deadlines and high-stakes research. And now? Now I am ready for more. Not because I have to prove anything, but because I can help. Because I have knowledge and experience that can make a difference. And because I finally understand that making a difference sometimes means risking imperfection." They stood together, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. A group of students from the tour emerged from the building, chatting excitedly about what they had seen. "What is next for you?" Dr. Patterson asked. "The Rapid Response Team launches officially next month. I will split my time between here and fieldwork. Sarah wants to shadow me during her winter break, so I will be training her. And I have been thinking about writing a book about outbreak response for small communities." "A book? That is ambitious." "I have 25 years of pent-up research and writing to let out. Might as well use it." "You know what I like most about this new version of you?" "What?" "You are not apologizing anymore. Not for taking up space, not for having expertise, not for being remarkable. You have accepted who you are." Stephanie smiled. "It took me long enough. But you got there. That is what matters." Winter came to Golden Meadow, transforming the Golden Meadows into white wonderlands. Sarah Henderson kept her promise to shadow Stephanie during her school break. Every morning she arrived at the clinic early, eager to learn. The winter was particularly cold that year. Snow fell frequently, blanketing the town in pristine white. But Sarah never missed a day, trudging through snow to reach the clinic by 7 each morning. "Today we are going to practice diagnostic protocols," Stephanie told her one snowy morning. "I will present you with a case, and you will walk me through how you would investigate it." Sarah nodded seriously, pulling out a notebook she had brought specifically for these lessons. The notebook was already half full of observations, sketches of animal anatomy, and notes from their previous sessions. "A farmer calls. His goats are showing reduced appetite and mild lethargy. What do you do?" "First, I would ask questions. How many goats are affected? When did symptoms start? Any recent changes in feed or environment?" "Good. What else?" "I would visit the farm to examine the goats directly. Look for other symptoms. Check their living conditions." "Excellent. Why visit in person?" "Because you can see things over the phone that you cannot. Body language in animals, conditions of their environment, details the farmer might not think to mention." Stephanie smiled. "Very good. You are thinking like a scientist. Now, Let us say you examine the goats and find slightly elevated temperature and some nasal discharge. What is your hypothesis? Sarah thought carefully, chewing on her pencil. Could be a mild respiratory infection, maybe environmental irritants in the barn, or stress from weather changes. How would you test these hypotheses? Collect samples, blood work, check the barn for ventilation issues or mold. Review recent weather patterns. They worked through several scenarios, Stephanie gently correcting and guiding. Sarah absorbed everything like a sponge, asking intelligent follow-up questions, making connections between different concepts. You have a natural talent for this, Stephanie observed. The ability to think systematically while staying open to possibilities. I learned it from watching you during the outbreak, the way you collected samples at different points along the creek, how you documented everything, how you did not jump to conclusions even when you had a theory. Those lessons came hard for me. When I was younger, I was more confident, sometimes too confident. The laboratory accident taught me the importance of caution and thoroughness. Do you still think about it? The accident? Yes, but differently now. I used to think about it as proof that I was not good enough. Now I think about it as a reminder to stay humble, to double-check, to work carefully. The memory still hurts, but it also helps me be a better scientist. Sarah wrote something in her notebook. What are you writing? Notes about what you just said, about how we can learn from our mistakes instead of just feeling bad about them. I want to remember that when I make my own mistakes. Stephanie felt a warmth in her chest. This was why teaching mattered. Not just passing on technical knowledge, but sharing hard-won wisdom. That afternoon, they got a call from a farm 15 miles away. Several pigs were showing concerning symptoms. It was potentially related to the outbreaks Stephanie's rapid response team was monitoring in adjacent counties. Want to come with me? Stephanie asked Sarah. Really? Yes. They drove through the snowy landscape, Stephanie explaining what they might find and how they would investigate. Sarah asked intelligent questions, taking notes even while riding in the car. At the farm, Stephanie let Sarah assist with the examination while she supervised. She watched the girls' careful handling of the animals, her detailed observations, her willingness to admit when she did not know something. The pigs showed symptoms consistent with a viral infection. Stephanie collected samples and provided care instructions to the farmer. Sarah helped with everything, learning by doing. You are going to be an excellent veterinarian, Stephanie told her as they drove back. I hope so. I want to be like you, helping animals and also doing research to prevent diseases. You can be better than me, learn from my mistakes without having to make them yourself. Did you have mentors when you were starting out? Yes, some excellent ones. But I did not always listen to their advice about balance, about not taking on too much pressure, about forgiving myself for being human. If I could do it over, I would listen better. I am listening, Sarah said seriously. Over the winter break, they fell into a comfortable routine. Mornings at the clinic, handling regular patients. Afternoons reviewing Sarah's biology textbooks and discussing advanced concepts. Some evenings, Stephanie would share stories from her research career, both the triumphs and the failures. Why did they call you Dr. Boyd at your old job but Stephanie here? Sarah asked one evening as they sorted through educational materials. In research, titles matter. They signal credentials and expertise. Here, I wanted to be just a person. No titles, no expectations, just someone who loved animals. But you are Dr. Boyd. That is part of who you are. Yes, it took me a long time to accept that. For years, I thought I had to choose, either be the failed researcher or the humble assistant. But I am both. All of it is me. That makes sense, like how I am Sarah the daughter, Sarah the student, Sarah the horse lover? All different parts, but all me. Exactly. The weeks of winter break passed quickly. Sarah absorbed knowledge voraciously, her notebook filling with observations and insights. When she returned to school, she continued to visit on weekends, unable to stay away from the work she loved. Spring brought new life to Golden Meadow and new opportunities for Stephanie. The rapid response team had successfully contained 3 potential outbreaks over the winter using the protocols she developed. Her reputation grew within the veterinary and agricultural research communities. One April morning, she received a call from the State Veterinary Association. Dr. Boyd, we would like to honor you with our Distinguished Service Award at our annual conference. It recognizes individuals who have made exceptional contributions to veterinary medicine and animal welfare. Stephanie was stunned. That is very kind, but I do not know if I deserve— Dr. Boyd, the caller interrupted gently. You absolutely deserve this. Your work has saved countless animals and livelihoods. Your protocols are being taught statewide. And your story about overcoming past challenges to serve your community has inspired many in our field. She accepted, of course. And when the day came, she stood before hundreds of veterinarians, researchers, and students to receive the award. Dr. Patterson and Sarah were in the audience, both beaming with pride. When I resigned from military research 26 years ago, I thought my career was over, she said in her acceptance speech. I could not imagine a future where I contributed meaningfully to science. I was wrong. I learned that careers do not end because of mistakes or setbacks. They evolve. They transform. Sometimes they even become better than they were before, because the hard experiences teach us compassion, humility, and resilience. I spent 25 years working quietly in a small-town veterinary clinic. Those were not wasted years. They were healing years. Years when I reconnected with why I loved helping animals in the first place. Years when a community taught me about kindness, second chances, and the courage to be yourself. When Golden Meadow faced a disease outbreak, I had a choice. I could stay hidden, protecting myself from potential failure. Or I could use my abilities to help, accepting that helping sometimes means risking imperfection. I chose to help, and in doing so, I rediscovered myself. Not the fearful person who had been running from her past, but the scientist I was always meant to be. One who combines technical knowledge with deep compassion for the animals and people we serve. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. It is never too late to step into your purpose. Never too late to forgive yourself for being human. Never too late to use your gifts to make a difference. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Afterwards, many people approached her with their own stories of setbacks and comebacks, of fears overcome, and second chances embraced. A young veterinarian, just a few years out of school, spoke with tears in her eyes. I made a serious mistake last year. An animal died because I misdiagnosed. I have been thinking about quitting, but hearing your story, maybe I do not have to let one mistake define my entire career. Stephanie took her hands. Learn from it. Let it make you more careful, more thorough. But do not let it silence you. The animals need you. Your future patients need you. And the person you will become through learning from this experience, they need you too. The young woman nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. I needed to hear that. Stephanie gave her contact information. If you ever need someone to talk to, someone who understands, please reach out. She spent the rest of the conference connecting with people, sharing insights, learning from others. The veterinary community embraced her warmly, many expressing gratitude for her willingness to be vulnerable about her past. On the drive home, Dr. Patterson commented, "You handled that beautifully. The speech, the interactions, all of it. I felt like myself, finally, completely myself. That is because you are. No more hiding, no more shame. Just Dr. Stephanie Boyd in all her complex, imperfect, brilliant humanity. It feels good. It looks good on you. Epilogue. The Golden Years. 5 years after the outbreak, Stephanie Boyd celebrated her 71st birthday, surrounded by the community she loved. The party was held at the Patterson Boyd Center, which had become a hub of veterinary excellence and research in the region. Dr. Patterson, now fully retired but still a regular presence at the clinic, raised a toast. To Stephanie, who taught us that our later years can be our greatest years, that wisdom and experience are valuable currencies, and that it is never, ever too late to become who you were meant to be. To Stephanie, everyone echoed. She looked around at the faces gathered to celebrate with her. Sarah, now in her second year of veterinary school and doing exceptionally well. Jim Carter's son, also in veterinary school. Dr. Mitchell and the rapid response team. The farmers whose animals she had saved. The townspeople who had become her family. Tom Henderson stood to speak. 5 years ago, Stephanie saved Thunder and all our animals. But more than that, she saved herself. She stopped hiding and started living fully. In doing so, she gave us all permission to do the same. To be brave. To use our abilities. To risk failure in service of something greater than ourselves. Stephanie felt tears of joy on her cheeks. These were not the fearful tears she had cried so often in her early years in Golden Meadow. These were tears of gratitude and fulfillment. The center had grown beyond even their ambitious plans. 3 full-time veterinarians now worked there. A team of researchers studied agricultural diseases. Dozens of students rotated through for training each year. The Boyd Protocol had been implemented in 7 states. Later, as the party wound down, she walked through the facility she had helped create. The examination rooms where animals were healed. The laboratory where students learned and research happened. The teaching spaces where knowledge was shared. This was her legacy. Not just the buildings and equipment, but the culture of learning, compassion, and courage they represented. Sarah found her there, now a confident young woman pursuing her dreams. Dr. Boyd, I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me what is possible. When I met you 5 years ago, you were just the nice veterinary assistant who helped Dr. Patterson. Now you are this amazing scientist and teacher. You grew, and you let us watch you grow. That is a gift. You gave me a gift too, Sarah. You and everyone in Golden Meadow. You pulled me back into the light. You refused to let me stay small. Are you happy? Sarah asked, with how everything turned out. Stephanie thought about the question. Was she happy? She was 71 years old. She worked too many hours. She still sometimes woke up from nightmares about the laboratory accident, though they were rare now. She had arthritis in her hands and needed reading glasses for tiny print. But she was using her abilities to their fullest. She was training the next generation of veterinarians and researchers. She had developed protocols that were saving animals across the region. She was part of a community that valued and appreciated her. She had reconnected with old colleagues like James Richardson. She had published a book on outbreak response that was being used in veterinary schools. Yes, she said finally. I am happy, more than I ever thought I could be. As the sun set over Golden Meadow, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Stephanie Boyd stood at the window of her office in the center that bore her name. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the brilliant young researcher, the devastating accident, the years of hiding, the outbreak that forced her to choose between safety and service, the slow, challenging process of forgiving herself and accepting her value. She was not the same person she had been 26 years ago when she first arrived in Golden Meadow. She was not even the same person she had been 5 years ago during the outbreak. She was better, wiser, more complete, more herself, and she was not done yet. There were more students to teach, more outbreaks to prevent, more animals to help, more knowledge to share. A second book was already in progress, focusing on community-based disease prevention. The best years, she had learned, were not necessarily the early ones. The best years were the ones when you knew yourself, accepted yourself, and used yourself fully in service of something meaningful. She was 71 years old, and she was just getting started. Outside, Golden Meadow sparkled in the fading light, the meadows that gave the town its name glowing golden and beautiful. This was home. This was where she belonged. This was where Dr. Stephanie Boyd had finally stopped running and started living, and it was good. It was very, very good. Mrs. Chen appeared at her office door with a small cake, a single candle flickering. "For the birthday girl. I know the party is over, but I wanted a private moment." Stephanie smiled, touched. "Thank you, Helen." "Make a wish." Stephanie closed her eyes, but she did not wish for anything. She had everything she needed. Instead, she said a silent thank you to this town, to these people, to the second chance she had been given. She blew out the candle. "What did you wish for?" Mrs. Chen asked. "Nothing. I have everything I need." Mrs. Chen hugged her. "That is the best kind of birthday, the kind where you do not need wishes because your life is already full." As Stephanie locked up the center that evening and walked home through the familiar streets, she felt at peace. The golden light of late evening bathed everything in warmth. Neighbors called out greetings. Dogs barked cheerfully. Children played in yards. This was life. Simple, beautiful, meaningful life. Dr. Stephanie Boyd was home. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below.